Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle House. And in this video, we need to talk about inevitability. That which is unavoidable. That which is certain. Like taxes. Or Darkhawk 1 buying you your private island. Or in the case of the topic of this video, Ultimate Fallout 4, both the regular edition and their Djurjevic variant, returning to its native trendline home. So in this video, we need to talk about these recent Comiclink sales, and maybe more importantly, the surprise that still sits within the comic collecting community. You know, when you're out there reading all the reactions to the Facebook groups or the Reddit forums or wherever people talk about values and sales of comic books, there's still a large portion of the comic book collecting market that is actually surprised with these figures. And so in this video, I want to talk about that, and then also maybe talk about the negativity that people are feeling in the current state of the comic book market as a result of this surprise. And then ultimately try to land the plane in some kind of place where we can just realize that while we have to accept that prices are coming down, this is also the best time to collect. But before I get into it, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I would appreciate it. Help support the channel, doing those things. But let's get into this video here today. Now, if you guys are not familiar, Comiclink is one of the big auction houses out there. They are actually currently having one of their bigger kind of year-end sales, and they had a section of Grail comic books, mixed in with Golden Age and Silver Age and all that stuff. And here are some modern Grails as well that went up for auction just the other night. And in back-to-back sales, they had the Ultimate Fallout 4 Djurjevic variant that sold, and also, an Ultimate Fallout 4 in a 9.8. And here you guys can see the sold prices for these particular books. Ultimate Fallout 4, the Djurjevic variant, selling for a low of, the last 3 years here at $16,550. Additionally, an Ultimate Fallout 4 in a 9.8 selling at $1,200. Both of these sales would be some of the lowest numbers that this book has gotten since definitely that of 2020, when the market really started to pick up out there in the comic collecting space. And I think that this one is really interesting, mostly due to the fact that, the reaction to this sale has been, very entertaining to read a lot of the comments. Now, I'm not actually going to pull up, some of the threads that I've actually seen. Just know that, I've seen them on Instagram and Facebook and things like that. It's very surprising to me still that there's a lot of people out there who talk about, this sale being like a doom and gloom sort of situation, or, the sky is falling. And while it does, seem like the sky could be falling, because like $16,000 is the lowest this book has sold for since, January of 2021. But again, this was inevitable. I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but, we've been talking here on the YouTube channel for a long time now about, the comic book index. We've been following, the macro economy with interest rates and all of this stuff. And we have determined that, all of this COVID money has to get squeezed out of these books. And you know what? Not all of it is going to happen overnight. Like, you're not going to just go from $40,000 straight down to $16,000. It's going to take some time, but just know that it's eventually going to happen. And, we did actually see it right here last night. Now, one of the things that is interesting about Comiclink is that, these particular sales on this particular auction house do not get recorded into GPA. They do not get factored in to some of the pricing guides and pricing sheets. Like, you won't see the sale show up here on Go Collect. So that means that the fair market value is still going to indicate that, it's still a $20,000 book. And most people who look at GPA are going to point to, oh, well, the last sale for this book was still, $20,000. And so I suspect that, over the course of the next couple months or so, we might eventually see this book sell once again at the $16,000 range. I mean, based on the model that we've been talking about, it's even possible that this book could go as low as, say, $14,000, as it did in 2021 or end of 2020. I mean, you might even say, if you're very bearish on this book, I mean, you can look at, in mid 2020, when it was $4,000, it doubled overnight because of the excitement of the video game and the speculation and all that sort of stuff. So maybe you're thinking that, it's even inflated going all the way back to, summer of 2020. But I tend to think that a lot of comic book collectors have price memory, and I doubt that even if this book went down to the $12,000 level, I don't think people are ever going to allow it to go back down to the $4,000 level. There's just too many people who are bullish on this character, fans of this character, too many dealers that just would pick this up easily for $10,000 and sit on it. So I don't actually think it'll ever go back down to that level, though I could be entirely wrong. Additionally here, the Ultimate Fallout 4, I'll just show you guys really quick so we can get more context as we talk about this, and we talk about some of the negativity that is out there in the comic book market, especially with this particular book, and then also just, the general state of things. But as you guys can see, we've been seeing some of these numbers, like even 1260 here on Heritage was a really, really low number. I mean, 1326 was low, 1300 was low. And this has been a book that, has been kind of hemorrhaging from its top here in 2022. And then it got a little bit of a lift, during the last movie when it went back up to $2,000, and now is sort of going back down to the $12,000 range, or the $1,200 range. And you can see, this book has the potential, based on how many copies are out there, to reset even as far as, $1,000, which is what it was going for in December of 2020. I mean, there's just enough copies of this book that someone is always going to be looking to make a sale. There's always going to be somebody slabbing this book. There's always going to be a comic book collection that is picked up by a comic book dealer, and that dealer is going to, want to quickly move that book to recoup their money. So there's always going to be somebody out there that is willing to make a deal with somebody looking to pick that up, and it's a race to the bottom at that point with that particular book. But these are still incredible modern comic books. And I think what is one of the really interesting things as, you kind of dig into like the forums and read people's comments and things like that is maybe this idea of, as comic collectors, we all have our favorites, whether they be specific comic books or maybe they, are specific genres of comic books. There are those who really, really enjoy variants, and then there are those who really, really enjoy, Golden Age comic books, and there are those who enjoy Marvel, and there are those who enjoy DC. And there's a lot of, maybe you want to call it a competition or friendly competition or, finger pointing and things like that happens in the comic book market, because there's a lot of our identity that is tied to certain books. A lot of people feel like, if modern variants become, the hot craze and start selling for more than Golden Age books, well, then that might be an indication that I, as a Golden Age collector, my time is done. And now like these modern variants are going to be the ones that the comic book collecting community chases. Or, there's people out there who have an emotional attachment to Miles Morales, and they really, really like this Georgievich variant. And they want this, comic to go to the moon, or that this is their favorite character. And now they're like upset that the sales prices are going down because they want this to be, the ultimate Grail. And then you have these people who don't like Miles Morales because they're a fan of Peter Parker. And you have people who don't like Peter Parker because they're a fan of Batman. So they, don't like Silver Age Marvel, And so it's a very interesting thing how people draw lines in the sand and pick teams when it comes to, certain comic books and values. And how it's sort of like an attack on their identity if a book goes up or down. But, I think where I want to go with this and what I ultimately want to say with it is that, we're simply in a place where the macro economy has had such a strong effect on the values of comic books that, it doesn't matter whatever really is happening in pop culture as far as like what is going to happen with the values of these comic books. I mean, Take the conditions that Ultimate Fallout 4 had, back in 2020 when we got the, Miles Morales video game that came out. And that was actually really one of the first, things that pushed that book's value up, just the excitement of the video game. And here we are, with the release of Spider-Man 2, if you guys are not gamers out there, there's another Spider-Man video game that now has, Miles Morales and Peter Parker and Venom and all that stuff. And there was a lot of speculation that like, oh, this, based on what happened last time, this video game could now push up the books once again, but we just are not in a state where these pop cultural things can have any effect, similar to that of, say, Loki. I mean, I know a lot of people are mixed on the MCU, but a lot of people also really like season 2 of Loki. And for the most part, that show has not had any effect on the secondary market. And that has everything to do with the fact that, this chase of the speculation or excitement of the current comic book market is just not there. I mean, there's just so much negativity because of the fact that the prices have been coming down so hard. But I think it's important to understand that these things were inevitable. This was going to happen. And that doesn't mean that you need to sort of sour completely on the comic book collecting market. If you're somebody out there who, enjoys doing this, or, you would like to see, values go up or whatever. I mean, it's going to happen. These are the boom and bust cycles of comic book collecting, And I think that it's important to sort of kind of keep like a level head with a lot of these things, like accept that your favorite comic book, if it hasn't already corrected, is eventually going to correct. And, even in the case of a Golden Age comic books, there are some out there that, depending on when they sold, are going to feel some of the pressures as well. Like, there's obviously ones that, are going to be the major keys and they can buck the trend. Sure, you can point to individual examples, but, there are Golden Age books that, sold during the hype of 2022 and 2021 and, aren't getting as strong numbers here in 2023. I mean, think of all the Wonder Woman books that are certainly feeling that, or, even those Batman ones or Superman ones, are still struggling to meet some of their record highs from the previous time, or even just a lot of the more common Golden Age books, like a lot of the EC stuff, just doesn't move in the same way. So it's very, very interesting to see that. And ultimately, again, we have to sort of accept that our favorite comic book is going to feel the pressures of the economy, but that also doesn't mean that this book is now dead and is not going to have any value in the future. I mean, we've talked a lot about, where interest rates are and things like that. And, it's still going to take another probably 6 months or so before we maybe entertain this idea of like a Fed pivot. And again, we don't know if comic books are going to move in tandem to what actually happens with the Fed. I mean, this is all sort of, causation and correlation and things like that. But, it also sort of makes sense when you back up and you sort of think about it. So it's a very interesting time. And once again, I'll refer back to the comic book index. I've been tracking the values for books over the last 5 years. And what we've seen is, the values that are that come in October and November, those tend to be the lowest year over year sort of numbers. Basically the index always struggles, goes to struggle street in October and November, where we see a lot of low sales. And then December is the time when, again, I've always guessed that a lot of people are trying to, get some tax expenses in there and squeeze in some big purchases in December, or, would give people comic books for Christmas and things like that. And then that usually catapults us into the next year. So it doesn't really surprise me. And again, a lot of these corrections are inevitable. And even whether they be for, modern books or silver books or bronze books or whatever, I mean, this is always going to be on the table, even for a book like the UF4 Variant, selling for $16,000, the lowest it's sold in the last 3 years. Anyways, that's all for this video. That was me just sort of doing a little bit of a market report, but trying to give it a little bit of a different spin, talking about this idea of, the bearishness and the negativity. I know a lot of people out there call me Bear Haas, from time to time. I'm just trying to be, honest about this stuff. And and to me, again, even if I'm saying, being bearish or acting bearish on the comic book market, I'm not trying to imply that you shouldn't be buying comic books. I mean, again, I very, very much emphasize that, now is a great time to look to buy. I mean, it doesn't mean that you go buy the next, UF4 Variant that you see out there being sold for $17,000. It's possible it could go for $14,000. I mean, you don't really know, but you have to use your own sort of assessment and do your own research and analysis, and then determine if this is actually a good pickup for yourself. But, if you're somebody out there who has the ability to pick up a lot of these books, they could be very, very fruitful for you in the future, because I am very bullish on the comic book market, at least for the next 10 years. I mean, maybe 50 years from now, I don't know what's going to look like. We're all going to be living in meta, with our digital comic book collectibles. We'll be able to literally walk into the pages of Ultimate Fallout 4. That would be pretty cool. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. That was me just doing the market report. What do you guys think about this recent sale? What do you guys think about the conversations and the shock that people have for some of these low numbers that we're getting in the comic sales at these auction houses? What do you guys think about that? Anyways, comment, subscribe. See you on the next video.